everyone. It is with great pride and honor to introduce our special guest to riding of Scarborough North in the great community of Scarborough. We have MPP Irish Babikian from Scarborough North, MPP PJ Tadikansalam from Scarborough Rouge Park, and David Smith, MPP for Scarborough Centre. I also want to welcome the Solicitor General Michael Kerzner and the Attorney General Doug Downey to Scarborough. And before I introduce Mark Baxter from the Ontario Police Association, I also want to introduce someone who is no stranger to Scarborough. And I think you may know him. It is because of his leadership, and the Scarborough is getting new aerospace funding, building a new Bushman hospital, building a first-of-its-kind medical school at the University of Toronto Scarborough campus. And of course, finally, it is because of him we are finally having the subway come to Scarborough. He is the one who's getting it done not only for Scarborough, but for all of Scarborough. He is not only my friend, people all across Scarborough. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving him a warm welcome to Ontario's Premier Doug Ford.
Now we'll turn it over to Mark Baxter.
Good afternoon. I want to start off by thanking Premier Ford, Minister Kerzner, Minister Downey, and the Government of Ontario for inviting the Police Association of Ontario, as well as our colleagues from the Ontario Provincial Police Association and the Toronto Police Association here today. Premier, Ministers, thank you for your commitment to public safety. Our members, police service personnel from across Ontario, and the communities they serve have been telling us for years that Canada's bail framework has failed to prioritize the safety of our communities. Our members have stopped referring to the court and prison system as a revolving door. For them, and for the communities they serve, it no longer feels like the door is revolving, but instead that it is simply wide open. Today's announcement starts addressing the failures of the current bail system, and we hope is the beginning of that door to start closing. Repeat and violent offenders are arrested for committing a violent crime one day and then released and found to be committing a similar crime the next. This government is taking a significant step in keeping our community safe and restoring faith in our justice system. With these dedicated resources, police personnel will have increased capacity to routinely check up on those released on bail and ensure that conditions placed upon them are truly having the effect of ensuring public safety by preventing further crime and victimization. Ontarians will be able to feel safer on their way to work, at school, and out in their communities. We applaud these steps, and we are encouraging all levels of government to do their part for a safer Ontario and Canada. The Police Association of Ontario and our colleagues at the Canadian Police Association have made it clear in Ottawa that amendments to the Criminal Code are needed to fully tackle the issue of the release of repeat and violent offenders in our communities. Our judges and Crown prosecutors need the legal tools to guarantee that repeat and violent accused persons will not pose a risk to public safety prior to their trial. Right now, the tools available are inadequate, and persons are routinely granted bail when they pose a great threat to the public. We appreciate movement from the federal government to look at making changes to the criminal code, but now is the time for action. Bail compliance units are only as useful as the conditions they are enforcing, and violent crime bail teams in our courts are only as effective as the criminal law allows. Ontario has given the justice system more resources for this vital issue. Now we need the federal government to provide us with the proper legal tools. The Police Association of Ontario is looking forward to our continued work with the Government of Ontario to keep our communities safe, and we urge all levels of government to do their part for a safer Canada. Again, on behalf of the Police Association of Ontario and our members, I want to thank the Premier, the Minister, and the Government of Ontario for moving forward with this step and for their dedication to the safety and well-being of our members and the communities that we serve. It's now my pleasure to turn it over to the President of the Toronto Police Association, John Reid. John does such a great job representing the members here in Toronto. John.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Premier Ford, Minister Kerzner, Downey, and everybody who's joined us today. And thank you as well to our members here at 42 Division. We are proud to be your association and proud of the work you do each and every day. We can all agree that for quite some time, our sense of justice has been wavering and our safety feels like it's diminishing. Our members who serve our communities do not experience events on paper or on video or in theory. They live it in real time daily within the communities they serve. And sometimes they pay the ultimate sacrifice in doing so. The victims of crime, communities, members of the public do not experience those events on paper, on video, or in theory. They live it too, daily. While the rights of an accused are important, they cannot and should not be at the expense of public safety. We are not suggesting the outright denial of bail, but when our justice system permits the release of repeat violent offenders into our communities, our police services need the necessary resources to enforce these conditions and keep our neighborhoods safe. At our current staffing levels, our members find it increasingly difficult to do this, often, if at all. Historically, we've had bail compliance units in Toronto, teams of officers whose sole purpose was to monitor and conduct compliance checks at the local divisional level within their communities. With today's announcement, with the support from the provincial government, we see a resurgence of these teams, and that means greater accountability for the offenders and the reassurance of our members and the public they serve. We are grateful for the ongoing cooperation that we've had with the Ford government, and we look forward to the many more progressive changes. Thank you very much. Now over to Minister Downey. Thank you.
Hello and good afternoon, and thank you, Minister Cho, for your enthusiasm and for your great representation here. And I want to thank Mark Baxter, who you just heard from, the President of the Police Association of Ontario, and John Reid, of course, the President of the Toronto Police Association, and I know the OPPA is here as well. Premier Ford, Minister Kerzner, it's good to be here today. It's great for this important announcement to be in Scarborough. I'm pleased to be here and to join you to announce how our government is working to address bail compliance for violent and repeat offenders. I'd like to take a moment to thank the Toronto Police Service and 42 Division for having us here today. And I'd like to extend my sincere gratitude to each and every police service member in the province and for your continued collaboration across the justice sector and for the very important work you do on the front lines to keep all of our communities safe. We know that Ontario has seen an increase in serious violent crimes, allegedly involving individuals already on bail release orders. This is deeply concerning, and we've seen the ways these events reverberate through our communities and how they affect people's lives and well-being every day. And these incidents are not isolated to one city or one region. Simply put, this is an issue that impacts all of Ontario. It demands a cross-government approach, one that aims to keep our communities safe from violent criminals and ensures we implement new measures to increase public safety. Let me be clear. It is absolutely critical that we uphold public safety and that we ensure the justice system remains resilient and adaptable. We're supporting a legal system that works for all Ontarians, one that we can continue to rely on, working alongside other justice system partners like police to keep our communities safe. Our government knows that alongside the federal government, we need to address bail reform. And so, it was Premier Ford who strongly advocated to the federal government for bail reform across the nation with his colleagues from every province and territory. And he advocated for you right here at home. Leading this charge for meaningful change here in our communities, we'll continue working in partnership with the federal government to ensure our judicial system is equipped with the means necessary to ensure that our communities are safe and the work of our frontline officers is not wasted. After all, a safe Ontario is a strong Ontario. Once again, I'd like to thank Premier Ford and Minister Kerzner for your continued dedication to public safety and to ensuring law enforcement and prosecutions are continuing to work together to keep our communities safe. Thank you. Merci. Miigwech. Now I'll turn it over to the Solicitor General.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's an honor to join all of you here today. A safe Ontario is a strong Ontario, and there's never been a government in our province or in our country that has cared as much about our public safety as this government. Today's announcement is about taking action to keep the people of Ontario safe, and I want to thank Premier Ford for his leadership. For our Premier and our government, public safety is personal. That's because people are afraid to walk our streets. They're afraid to take public transportation. They're afraid to go out at night. And we can't allow that to continue, and we won't. Repeat violent offenders cannot be released back into our communities. Our Premier and our government have been relentless in calling for bail reform and strengthening bail compliance. In January, our Premier led a national effort to draw attention to this issue. And then in March, our government joined leaders from the federal government, provinces, and territories in Ottawa to work together on bail reform. I was also pleased to see MPPs from all parties come together to support our motion on behalf of the Ontario Legislature calling for meaningful bail reform. We are being proactive, purposeful, and precise in our investments so we can target crime and keep our communities safe. And today, we are thinking of the families who have lost a loved one as a victim of violent crime, particularly by someone out on bail. I think about our police heroes who have fallen in the line of duty, including Toronto Police Constable Andrew Hong and OPP Constable Jegor Pershkala, whose lives were cut short. May their memories forever be a blessing as heroes in life. And I want to take a moment to recognize everyone who keeps our community safe. They deserve to go to work and to come home safely. The status quo cannot continue. Everyone has a right to feel safe in their own community, and enough is enough. We can never take our public safety for granted. And recently, we've seen a new level of brazenness from those who wish to do harm. And when we see this behavior, we must call it out. We must act. When it comes to keeping people safe and addressing crime in our communities, we will stop at nothing. And as Solicitor General, keeping Ontarians safe and addressing crime in our communities will always be my top priority. We are assisting police and our justice sector partners to address issues of bail compliance and help ensure that both sentencing and bail processes actually work to reduce violent acts and keep our communities safe. The rule of law must matter, and our public safety must matter. And that's what today is all about. In closing, I want to thank Premier Ford again for making public safety a priority, because a safe Ontario is a strong Ontario. We won't wait. We won't sit by. We will listen and we will lead. We are going to help fix a broken system. We will continue to do everything we can to keep Ontario safe. Thank you. And now it's my honor and privilege to turn it over to our Premier, Premier Doug Ford.
Well, thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone. And on behalf of Minister Kerzner and Minister Downey, I just want to acknowledge the great job the Solicitor General and the Attorney General are doing day in and day out, along with Chief Demkew, thank you, and with Superintendent Greg Watts right here at 42 Division. And Greg, did you try to set me up there? I walk into the prep room and there's a box of Krispy Kreme donuts. I'll tell you, that's my weakness, but I didn't touch them. Deputy Chiefs Pogue and Johnson, thank you, and everyone at 42 Division in Scarborough for hosting us today, along with Mark Baxter from Police Association of Ontario, John Reid from the Toronto Police Association. I also want to acknowledge our local caucus, MPPs David Smith, Eris Babikian, Vijay Thanagaslam, and Minister Cho. They're all doing a tremendous job representing the great people of Scarborough. It's also great to see our OPP Commissioner, Thomas Karik, and all of our policing partners from associations right across the province. Thank you for joining us. It's always a privilege and an honor to be alongside the brave women and men in uniform who put themselves in harm's way every single day to keep our communities safe. Friends, it's no secret. Across Canada, we're facing a growing wave of crime. In our big and medium-sized cities, small and rural communities, we're seeing increases in auto thefts, assaults, break-and-enters, and random acts of violence on public transit and on our streets. And here in Toronto, major crime is up over 20% compared to the same time last year. And they're up even higher right here in 42 Division. I can tell you, people don't feel safe. That's why earlier this week, we announced new measures to get more boots on the ground in every part of our province. And friends, while we work together with our police services to address policing shortages, we urgently need bail reform. We're seeing too many innocent people lose their lives at the hands of dangerous criminals and repeat offenders who should have been behind bars. In fact, over the past 2 years, 17% of people accused of gun murders right here in Toronto were out on bail for other firearm charges. That's unacceptable. It has to stop, and we'll make sure it stops. We can't have a justice system that fails to protect innocent people, a justice system where bad guys are allowed to run free, a justice system that has an open-door policy where violent criminals are arrested one day and let back out on the streets the next day. That's why earlier this year, I asked premiers right across the country of all political stripes to join me in calling on the federal government to make criminal code changes to fix Canada's bail system. This isn't a political issue, it's a public safety issue. And I'm so pleased that the federal government is taking this issue seriously and has agreed to work with us. Here in Ontario, we're doing our part to keep high-risk, violent reoffenders in jail where they belong. Today, we're pleased to announce $112 million in new funding for programs aimed at improving bail compliance. This funding includes investments to create a dedicated team of police officers to catch high-risk provincial offenders who aren't following their bail conditions or unlawfully at large. This funding includes new money for the OPP, municipal and First Nations police services to set up dedicated bail compliance teams to assist prosecutors with gathering evidence and assessing public safety risks during the bail hearing stage. We're also giving special teams of prosecutors the time and resources they need to conduct in-depth bail hearings for accused offenders deemed to be high risk. And we're investing in new technology to better monitor people out on bail. Together, these investments will help ensure that the most high-risk offenders remain in jail, and those accused of crimes and out on bail follow the rules. Our government is doing everything we can to support and protect our police officers, our communities, and our people. We're tackling rising crime rates by arming local police services with the resources and the tools they need to do their job. We're fighting back against guns and gangs. We're supporting those who need help with their mental health and addictions, while also making sure that our frontline officers are better equipped to respond to mental health crisis. We're bringing in reinforcements and getting more boots on the ground. And we're making sure the most dangerous criminals are locked up behind bars and not creating havoc on our streets. As Premier, I'll do whatever I can, whatever it takes to keep our province safe. Thank you all for joining us today, and may God bless the men and women in uniform, and may God bless the people of Ontario. Thank you.
We'll now go to the floor for questions. If reporters asking questions could please line up at the microphone behind me. Just a reminder, it'll be one question and one follow-up. First question.
Hi, it's Chris Richowi from the Toronto
Hi,
Star.
Chris.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how these new teams are going to work and how many new jobs will be created out of this money today.
Well, that's probably a good question for the Solicitor General, along with the Commissioner and the Chief DEMQ. So, Solicitor General.
Thank you. Good afternoon. The over $110 million is being invested to help keep our community safe today, and specifically $48 million will be available over 3 years to the OPP for the Repeat Offenders and Parole Enforcement Unit. It'll provide them with about 50 additional people for their units over the next few years. That'll go a long way to strengthening their enforcement unit. We're also providing $24 million that will be available for grants for the police services in Ontario, which will include First Nations police as well, so that they can beef up their own enforcement units as well.
Thank you, Premier. Just to expand on the Solicitor General's comments, this will mean that our Repeat Offender Enforcement Unit will go from 5 teams across the province to 10 teams. It means that we will have greater capacity to not only identify, but hold accountable those repeat violent offenders that pose the greatest risk to public safety in a coordinated way right across the province in partnership with our municipal and First Nation policing partners. This is a great day for the province of Ontario, and in terms of numbers, I can tell you that on the OPP, we're currently hiring a class of 135, and I can speak on behalf of Chief Demkew. I'm sure he's hiring just as many. So for anyone interested in a career in policing, today's the day to apply, especially with the announcement earlier this week that there's no more tuition fees at the college. So we're hoping that this will also spark an interest in a very dedicated profession that is absolutely critical to our communities. Thank you.
And thank you again, everybody, for being here, and thank you for that question. I'll just elaborate one step further and pick up on a point made by the president from the Toronto Police Association. There was a time when we had bail compliance units in every single one of our divisions. We are now going to be able to take a look at our model to reconstitute our capacity at the local divisional level, which really means being responsive to local community level, because that's where decisions are being made operationally to serve our communities locally. And in the context of the Toronto Police, it's at the local divisional environment, and this funding will provide us an additional capacity to do that. Thank you. And before I leave, I will echo the Commissioner's comments. We are indeed hiring. We are indeed very focused on creating the capacity to better respond to our core service needs. And certainly this week is a representation of incredible support that the policing community needs to make that possible. Thank you.
And just to reinforce that it's an all-of-government approach, we're investing $26 million over 3 years for intensive bail review, prosecutors, and back office support, so the whole system can function at a higher level.
Thank you. And a few references were made by yourself and your ministers that people don't feel safe. Was that in Toronto or Ontario? And have you heard from people that they feel unsafe?
I hear from people almost every single day, especially in Toronto. You see the numbers. You feel people feel when they go on the subway, they're concerned. They feel nervous if they're walking late at night. We live in Toronto. We don't live in Chicago or New York or some of the other areas. I lived in Chicago. There's some really bad areas. We're going to make sure we aren't like the Chicagos of the world, and we're going to make sure that we have the proper resources, the proper tools to give our police services right across the province to make sure that people are safe, they feel safe, and feel comfortable. For decades, everyone so proud, and I still feel, compared to large cities across North America and our great police services, they do an incredible job. But we have to make sure people are feeling comfortable, like we have for decades living here in Toronto.
Hi, Premier. Alison
Hi.
Jones with the Canadian Press.
Hi, Alison.
The announcement talks about part of this money going towards new bail compliance technology. I'm wondering if you could give me some examples of that and how it will help. Are we talking ankle monitors or what?
I think this is best answered by either the Solicitor General or Attorney General. Which one?
Thank you. And thank you for the question. You know, I have to really congratulate Durham Police Services and Toronto Police Services for coming up with an amazing piece of technology, which is this dashboard. And we will be able to bring it to a much larger scale than was piloted by Toronto Police Services and by Durham. It'll be something that the OPP is taking on that will be rolled out all over, and we'll be able to keep a very fine-tuned look on where people who are violating bail are, and we will be able to identify and to communicate with the local police services in the different jurisdictions where they are, so we can get them before they cause crime.
And for you, Premier, on the Science Centre,
Yes.
you had said that the employees were excited about the move, but the union that represents about 400 of them says they're angry, they're confused, they're worried about job losses. I'm wondering both what you based your statement on, and also if the move to a smaller facility is going to mean job losses.
Oh, great question. Guess where I just came from? The Ontario Science Centre. I drove by, I looked at the big, huge parking lot sitting there. But that's the city of Toronto. We're taking care of the actual Ontario Science Centre itself. And just to mention, I think the world of the people that work there, we've seen, people going through the Ontario Science Centre drop by 30%. I mentioned 40%, and I apologize if I was incorrect the other day, but 30%. Well, to the great employees there, do you know what happens in the private sector? When your sales are down 30% and we see a decline every single year from 30 to 40 and it's going to keep going, we don't need as many people. I want to make sure all the 400 people that are there are going to be employed. I want to make sure that we have a destination, that we see more and more people and tourists, along with the school buses that I saw over there, come through a state-of-the-art Ontario Science Centre. And you go by the Ontario Science Centre, and inside, it's run down. They're using 25% of the space. We're going to make sure that we have 300,000 square feet of exhibits right across the Ontario Science Centre. We're going to put it in a place that tourists come day in and day out. We're building a destination at Ontario Place, second to none. It's going to be world-class, more importantly, year-round. Folks, we have two choices here. We do what the previous government did for 15 years and just totally ignore it and let the status quo and watch the Ontario Science Centre just die. And Ontario Place, weeds growing up to your ankles around there, run down. Or we're going to build something world-class, something just absolutely amazing for tourists right across the world, in our country, and the province to visit. And the only difference is the previous government, they did nothing. We're a government that gets things done.
Hi, Premier. Cynthia Mulligan from City News.
Hi, Cynthia.
So, Premier, for the last few days, I've been exploring the Dufferin Rouge Agricultural Preserve. It's 5,000 acres on the part of the Greenbelt that you have removed to build housing. Now, last week in the legislature, you referred to a part of the Greenbelt as just a field of weeds. Yet this part of the Greenbelt is some of the best farmland in the entire country. You've said Ontario is very vast and that there's a lot of land, yet only 5% is suitable for farming. Your own housing task force deemed that you didn't have to touch the Greenbelt. There was enough land for housing. So then how do you justify building housing on prime farmland when your own housing task force says it's not necessary?
Well, first of all, thank you for that question. You always give me good, tough questions, Cynthia. Let me answer it this way. When I took office, the Greenbelt was X, that figure. Now, it's 2,000 acres larger than when I took office. That's the first point. And we're developing right butt up against existing communities. One side of the road, there's communities, there's houses. On the other side of the road, there's a field. All I can tell you, and it's private land, by the way, developers won't be building in marshes and ponds. That's left alone. And our task force did an incredible job. But guess what? The task force did the job when we thought we were getting 200,000 people a year. Guess what we got just last month? Stats Canada came out. 445,000 people landed in Ontario last year. We are the fastest growing region in North America bar none. And I mentioned this in the last press conference. People know Texas is growing at a rapid pace of 1,000 people a day. Florida, 1,000 people a day. 365,000 people a year are going into Texas and Florida. And they're double the size of us, Texas, in population. And Florida's about 22 million. We're about 15.5 million. We need to build homes. We need to make sure that there's supply and demand. That's what creates affordability for first-time home buyers. We're going at a rapid pace. And the reason we're going at a rapid pace is people come to areas that see economic development, that see jobs and opportunities. We're one of the fastest growing regions in creating jobs. We created over the environment for 640,000 more people are working today than they were working 4.5 years ago. When companies come here, like the Volkswagens of the world and the Stellantis, the first thing they ask is there's going to be affordable housing. Are our employees going to be taken care of? Are we going to have safe communities to live in? And the answer is yes. The reason we're attracting people, because we have the province moving in the right direction on economic development, job creation. We're leading North America.
So my follow-up, Premier, what about the environment? Does your government have any concerns when it comes to the environment? I mean, there are a lot of at-risk species in this area. It runs right adjacent to Rouge National Urban Park, the largest urban park in North America. The two interchange and everything is so delicately intersected. So my question is, are you concerned about the environment? Did your government do any environmental assessment before you took this land out of the green belt to assess if there would be a real serious impact?
Well, first of all, thanks again for that question, Cynthia. I will put our environmental policies up against any single government in the history of Ontario. We changed over 2 coal plants, steel plants, into electric arc furnaces, taking 2 million cars off the road. We're building the largest transit system in North America, spending $30 billion to get people out of cars into our transit. We're transforming the electric vehicle. I call it the electric vehicle revolution. We're leading North America when it comes to making sure that we get people out of gas-operated cars, get them into electric vehicles. We're one of the leading jurisdictions when it comes to creating, the critical minerals that will form the batteries that will be assembled in our auto plants. That's what we're doing for the environment. On top of that, we're adding more land, not just the Greenbelt, into parks right across this province. So again, thank you for the question. I will put our environmental policy up against any other government. And just to make a point, which I didn't hear any of you, by the way, 4.5 years ago and 5 and 6 years ago, when the previous government didn't change the Greenbelt once, not a peep out of the media, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 or 5, 17 times. We heard crickets from the media. My question is, why? And they did have a housing crisis. We have a housing crisis. We're going to build homes for people to live in, and supply and demand, we're going to build 1.5 million homes.
Hi, Premier. This is Rami Butros from Oxygen Media.
Hi, how are you?
Thank you very much for allocating 112 million for supporting the police force, especially the crime rate is rocketing. And let me get the opportunity to thank the police force for their great effort and even their sacrifice their lives to make us safe. My question is about Bill 75, which is federal, which makes the police missions very hard, in which when they arrested the bad guys, they are released again. With this 112 million will help to legislate new bills that protect the Ontarians from having the bad guys flee again, and would this be contradict with the federal laws? Thank you.
Well, great question. We're working collaboratively with all the premiers across the province, and we're working collaboratively with the federal government. You know, they responded very quickly when we sent that letter in. I know our Attorney General was up there with all the other Attorney Generals, but I will pass it over to our Attorney General and or our Solicitor General. Thank you.
So thank you for the question. And when we met in early March with my colleagues from across the country and from the territories were there, everybody was there. We are working very collaboratively. We've made our position very clear. The federal government has responded in parts, and Bill C-75 was part of that discussion. So I don't really want to compromise ongoing discussions. We have another meeting set up, but it is part of the mix, and we are taking it very seriously.
This will be the last question.
Hi, this is a question for Premier Ford. Angelina King with CBC Toronto.
Hi, Angelina.
You'd mentioned in the announcement that the province will continue to support people with mental health and addictions issues. I'm just wondering how the government plans to do that in the context of bail and ensure people who are released on bail have access to the supports and the services that they need so they can comply with the conditions that they have to follow.
Before I hand it over to the Attorney General, or again, the Solicitor General, we put unprecedented amount of money, again, largest in the history of this country, over $4 billion when it comes to mental health and addictions. I had an hour-long meeting with the first dedicated Minister of Mental Health and Addiction, Michael Tobolo, yesterday, running through the numbers, running through every single ministry that's getting funding for mental health and addiction, no matter if it's Solicitor General or Attorney General or education or health. We have a really robust program to support people with mental health and addictions. I'm passionate about helping folks get back on their feet and help them any way we can. But over to you, Attorney General.
Thank you, Premier. Yes, mental health and addictions is a core part of what we're doing across government in every department, whether it be Solicitor General's space or my space. You'll see that we're doing justice a little bit differently than it's been done in the past in certain areas. We've launched our 4th Justice Center in Kenora, and that is equipped to help deal with some of those issues. So we can't really point to one thing and say this is how we're dealing with it. We're dealing with it top of mind in everything that we do.
Thank you. I just wanted to add that the mobile crisis response teams, which we know have been amazingly successful all across Ontario, are because of the partnership that exists with local police services, including the OPP. This is a great example whereby interceding early enough, these mobile crisis response teams can absolutely make a difference. And I hope that they will be expanded over the years because they've proven to be amazingly successful. Thank you.
Thank you. And just another question for the Premier. Sure. In terms of the Eglinton Crosstown, people are still wondering when it's going to open and what's behind the delay. Can you give us an answer today?
Yeah, I know the CEO of Metrolinx and Minister Mulroney was out today talking about it. Let's make no mistake. Am I frustrated? Darn right I'm frustrated. Had a good conversation with Phil Verster yesterday and Minister today, and I have confidence in both of them. Folks, this is a project we inherited, and it's been taking way too long. But I told both of them, do not put that LRT going or that subway moving until it's 100% safe. I'm not going to pull a Mayor Watson in Ottawa, pushing it forward, derailing the LRT in Ottawa, making a total mess of it. We will not move until the whole line is absolutely safe. And as soon as I get the, a schedule that we're working on with the builders of the subway, I'll be the first to come out there. But I can assure you, my favorite line, am I on Metrolink like an 800-pound gorilla? I can assure you I am. But let's talk about what is going right. The Eglinton West line is 4 weeks ahead of schedule. We're building one of the greatest lines, the Ontario line. We had an announcement today on the Young North that we're delivering transportation, a subway, up to the folks outside of Toronto, up in Markham, Richmond Hill, Thornhill. For the first time, we're actually building a subway for the people of Scarborough with the leadership of our great MPPs here. It's the largest single project, all 4 lines that we've increased. We've increased the subway system by 50%. As we saw for 50, 60 years, the same old 2 lines. We're changing transportation, not only here in Toronto, but the GTA. So those other projects, they're moving fast and they're moving furious, and I just can't wait to hop on them. But we are not gonna run the Eglinton Crosstown until it's 100% safe. But I want to thank our police services. I want to thank our police leadership here for coming out today. And I also want to thank the federal government for collaborating and cooperating with us. They understand that there needs to be changes when it comes to the criminal code and bail reform, and I'm very grateful for that, but we can't delay it. We need to get it done as soon as possible. Thank you, everyone, and God bless. Thank you.